We'll be primarily focused on criminal defense matters, appeals, and post-conviction relief. My focus is very narrow. I think it's better to niche down in your practice areas. You know, you don't want your real estate attorney dabbling on your criminal defense case, just as if you had a heart issue, you wouldn't want your family practitioner that deals with colds dealing with your heart problem.
I don't want my podiatrist dealing with my heart problems. Yeah, you're right.
and so the bar doesn't say anything. When you use the word expert, we're not allowed to use the word expert or specialist. So I primarily focus on those areas, not an expert.
That's what but you have a number of years of experience in defending people who've been charged with crimes.
My entire career has been focused on criminal defense. I started as a runner in law school, and then a runner in undergrad, and then a law clerk through law school, working with John Delgado, one of the most experienced and notable criminal defense attorneys in South Carolina. And through working with him, before I even became a lawyer, we tried 3 or 4 murder cases together. I was with him when he tried 3 or 4 murder cases. He had not guilty verdicts in at least, I think, 2 of them, and maybe a hung jury on the other. So I had an incredible amount of criminal experience prior to becoming a lawyer. As far as appellate experience, I worked with John Nichols, who in the same firm, who is most notably probably the most well-known appellate lawyer in South Carolina. And on top of that, he has a new journey today as well. John Nichols starts today as the Chief Disciplinary Counsel, and where I'll have my office is actually where John Delgado and John Nichols' firm is. I'm leasing space through there, so the law firm is actually starting at 1614 Taylor Street in Columbia, and I'll have, by appointment only, office space here in Lexington, because I know how important it is to stay local and have access to the public in Lexington, because I'm born and raised in Lexington County.
Sure, yeah, right here in this community, in fact, where our studio is, over in the Pine Ridge area.
That's right. So I went to Wood Elementary, Pine Ridge Middle School, Airport High School, so born and raised.
Well, now, we've talked about this a lot, that there's so many different focuses that an attorney can have, everything from real estate to contract law, personal injury, Social Security, those kind of things. What got you so interested in defense?
Being completely honest, I wasn't sure when I first, one of the reasons I went to work for the law firm as a runner when I was in college was because I wanted to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. I certainly knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but I didn't know what type of lawyer I wanted to be. And then working with Delgado, his passion for criminal defense, his passion for just the practice of law, every day is different. It's interesting. You meet so many different people, and it's one of those that at first I wasn't sure that that's what I wanted to do. In fact, I didn't think that's what I was going to do. But through Delgado's passion and his zealous advocacy, and then seeing how interesting and fun criminal defense is, I fell in love with it. The bug bit me, and as what I've dedicated my practice to the entire time. I knew exactly what I was going to do after about a year or so of working with him. It's one of those that once you get bit by the bug, you can't turn around. I mean, certainly if you're chasing money, personal injury is the way to go. But I don't enjoy it all that much compared to criminal defense. I certainly can help people who have those and give them to the right people who focus on those areas, and certainly will work with somebody who primarily does that to help somebody. But my primary focus is criminal defense, criminal appeals, and post-conviction relief, because that's where my experience is at.
Now, first of all, let's explain. Personal injury. Somebody gets hurt at no fault of their own. You've been involved in a car wreck. You've fallen in a store. You've been hurt at work, and you're having trouble with the insurance coverage that your employer was required to have, perhaps, those kind of things. There's big money in that because the attorney that represents that person normally takes a third of the settlement, whatever it is.
Well, somewhere between 33 and 45% is what people take. And what you'll see is they're able to do that through settlements of insurance companies. And if you have a personal injury claim, I'll be happy to refer you to somebody that I know and trust will take care of you and do the right thing. And I think that's very important, something we've discussed on this show
a lot,
that you do not cold call attorneys. You want a direct referral where you know that you're getting somebody reputable, somebody who has experience. And although you can't use a prior result as a guarantee, but you want somebody who's had success. I mean, you know, the bar is very strict about us saying that, you know, any result that a lawyer's achieved in another case shouldn't create an expectation of a similar result in a future case. But what I can tell you is you want to find an attorney that not only has a lot of experience, but that they've been very successful. I mean, that's with any profession.
Sure. And I think that what is important for us, again, to go over is that there are a lot of folks that say, you know, they look down on the people in the legal field, attorneys. You know, there's hold them in very low self-esteem until you need one. Until you've been accused of a crime, until you've been hurt, and you've got all these bills stacking up and you can't pay your mortgage, until, you know, somebody's crashed into your car and you can't get back and forth to work.
That's right.
And it's their fault. And then suddenly an attorney's your best friend. And the truth of the matter is they're just advocates for folks that need help.
Exactly. So although attorneys get a bad rap, I mean, attorneys are the cornerstone of our country. You know, over half of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were attorneys. I mean, so the bedrock, the foundation of our country were built on lawyers, and I know that a lot of the advertising that's been put out there has put just a stain on our profession, and it does hurt legitimate lawyers by having this advertising out there that doesn't promote professionalism, doesn't promote that there are great attorneys out there who will advocate to take care of people, because the legal system is set up to help either the government or big corporations. That's the way it is. It's a money play, it's a power play, and if you don't have an advocate who's going to be able to step in your shoes, use their training and their experience to take care of you and to defend you and to make sure that everything is taken care of to get the best possible result, then you're going to most likely probably get taken advantage of in the system. And that's the sad part, that people aren't able to represent themselves. But that's not the nature of the system we live in, which is why it's so important to have an attorney who's reputable and experienced.
Yeah, and I know that you cannot or would not say this, but I have seen this, and I can say this. I have seen attorneys that are simply not willing to put in the work to be a good advocate, and so they will just twist and twist and twist the clients till they've squeezed every drop of money out, and then they say, let's settle. Let's settle. We won't go to court, let's settle. And you want an attorney that's going to fight for you for what's right to the end. So they should tell you up front, here's what's right, here's what we can reasonably expect, and then go from there.
That's exactly right. In every case, an attorney should say, this is the best case, this is the worst case, here's the most probable result based on all the cases I've worked on. Here's the range where we should expect things to shake out. And ultimately, a client will always have the final decision. Even if it's a worst case decision, they have that choice. But you are the one that needs to be that trusted advisor to give them that appropriate information. And the sad thing is that, yes, a lot of lawyers in the legal community sometimes don't put in the effort that's needed. And I think the easy way to see the difference between the two is the lawyers who've had success. You know, one of the things that Delgado's always, that he taught me, you know, my mentor instilled, was nothing replaces preparation and hard work. That the way you win a case is being more prepared than the other lawyer. And I couldn't agree with that more. In my career, the cases I've won, the things I've been able to do, is all because of the amount of work I put in and the time and effort. You know, it's not a 9-to-5 job, but if you have the attorney that's willing to do the things necessary, it's going to put you in the best position possible. And the sad thing is, what you'll see with a lot of criminal defense attorneys is a lot of them don't have a whole lot of trial experience, so they do. I have seen it. I've seen a lot of people get pressured into pleading guilty when they're telling their attorney that they're 100% innocent, but the attorney, and this is not just for cases where they probably should plead guilty, but for cases where they probably should go to trial, where they get sort of strong-armed into it because the attorney's afraid to go to trial.
Yeah, and that is so sad, but I have seen businessmen that have dealt with that in product issues that have just been furious and angry with their insurance company and with the attorneys that represent the insurance company because of it. I have a very close friend who built trailers and he bought robots that built trailers. So he built very, very high-end trailers here locally. And he had a policy that said, when you buy a new trailer from us, we will connect it to your vehicle before you tow it off our lot for the first time. He had a man that came and bought one. He had the man sign paperwork saying that he understood that. He went inside to get a young man to hook the trailer up. Before he got back, the man had hooked the trailer left. He goes down the road. He had it hooked to the wrong ball. The trailer came off, crossed the center line, hit another car. And the insurance company said, rather than fight it out in court, we're going to settle. We're going to pay for it. He was furious. He was absolutely furious. But the attorney was scared to fight for what was right. It was more about the money. And that happens regularly sometimes.
Happens every day. So for criminal defense cases, one of the things I always tell people, if you're sitting in front of an attorney, you need to ask several questions. Do you have any felony jury trial experience? And if they do, have they won any? And I think that question in and of itself, you'll find very few private attorneys who have significant felony jury trial experience, and even less that have won felony jury trials, that have gotten not guilty verdicts. And again, you can't use a prior result as a guarantee, and no lawyer, and that's another thing, if a lawyer ever guarantees you an outcome when you first meet with them in that initial meeting, you need to get up and walk out the door.
Right.
Because all they're trying to do is get your money. It's unethical. It's something that could get them disbarred, and they're only making that type of guarantee to try to get your money. And that's not, again, the right attorney will tell you, here's worst case, best case, and here's what's probably in the range of things that could happen, and of course ultimately explain that at the end of the day, the client drives the ship, and they get to make that final choice whether to go to trial, whether to plead guilty. It's not the attorney's decision, and that's important. You also want to look to see whether the attorney has any appellate experience. That way,
which means
appeals. So if someone's convicted, you can appeal the case to the South Carolina Court of Appeals and ultimately to the South Carolina Supreme Court, and those are dealing with just legal issues that happen at trial, and that shows that appellate experience, those appeals show that the attorney has knowledge and experience of the laws themselves. So when I initially got out of law school, I worked at the South Carolina Commission on Indigent Defense at the appellate division, and I did appeals for 2 years, and in that 2 years I filed over 100 criminal appeals. And I've always told people starting there first was like getting a master's in criminal law, is the way it felt like, because all I did for 2 years was read and write criminal appeals, criminal law. That's all I read and worked on day in and day out. And it's one of the greatest experiences that I've had. And through that, I've been able to argue at the South Carolina Supreme Court 5 different times and then 2 contempt hearings. So I've been before the South Carolina Supreme Court 7 times now, and the South Carolina Court of Appeals 20 times. And so the appellate experience is something that's, there's a very limited amount of people who have significant appellate experience, and I think it gives those attorneys a different insight, because there's two types. It's not just the courtroom advocacy, but it's also the knowledge of the law. That's what makes a lawyer, the law, and knowing how to argue and properly advocate on the client's behalf. Because I just had a jury trial this week on Monday, a magistrate court trial, and I believe the not guilty verdict was a direct result of the fact that there were legal rulings that I argued that the judge agreed with, that made sure he received a fair trial, and because of that, there was a not guilty verdict.
You learn so much from making mistakes and other people's mistakes. And in appellate law, you were reading to find those little mistakes that somebody else made.
Day in and day out, that's all you look at is mistakes and what the law actually is. And that's another thing. A lot of lawyers have not had the opportunity, because most of the time because of the nature of the practice, they're not sitting there reading the law day in and day out, so they don't get to know it all that well. They have base knowledge of it, but deep legal issues and cases that are important to know, it'd be shocking a lot of times to find how many people don't know some of the really when it comes down to it, the bare bones stuff of how to argue legal issues at trial, which again goes to the limited trial experience that a lot of attorneys have in private practice. So that's one of the things I tell people. You also want to look at the associations. Are they, excuse me, a member of the South Carolina Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers? Are they, are they active in that organization? What's their role? Are they active in anything else? National College of DUI Defense. These are organizations you need to look at to see, are they active in, if they're trying to say they're a criminal defense lawyer, there's got to be proof. Show your work, as the math teacher would say, right? So you want to look at those things, and if the attorney's not able to answer all those questions, I think that's something that you certainly need to go back and look at. And fortunately, I believe it's November 10th or November 11th, I'll be sworn in as the president of the South Carolina Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. So out of 4, maybe almost 500 criminal defense lawyers in South Carolina, be very fortunate in just a few days to be sworn in as their president.
Well, I have seen attorney-client relationships go bad enough times to know when it's happening, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people go out, they have a nice office, they have somebody that looks like a professional receptionist, and you go in and immediately that attorney is your best friend. They're going to help you, they're going to make things okay. Just come in, my boy, I got you back, I'm your friend. You write them a check, you give them cash, you give them a credit card, whatever you're going to do in whatever form of paying them. And for a while, they're very easy to get a hold of, and they're there when you need them, and you get antsy, uneasy. You want that return phone call, you're hearing from them. Then suddenly it gets a little harder to get a hold of. And then it gets a whole lot harder to get a hold of. And then suddenly it's, well, there's some things that have changed in your case, but I'll have to get you in here in a couple weeks and we'll talk about it. And suddenly you can't ever get them on the phone. And then they say, we need to settle. We need to go, you need to plea, and we need to plea this out. That's kind of the way I have seen these relationships go bad. Is that normally the way that you see things like that happen?
The number one reason for people receiving a grievance, a complaint at the Office of Disciplinary Counsel for a lawyer, is communication. Failure to communicate with their clients. Lawyers are notoriously known being not good communicators with their clients. One of the things I try to pride myself on is constant communication. If someone calls me, they're going to get a call back within 24 and 48 hours, depending on my court schedule. That is something that must be done, so they know that I'm still working on their case. I have not forgot about them. Whenever a letter goes out or comes in, they will be notified. If we have any type of movement on their case, they'll be notified. If the status changes. And I've found that when you keep people notified, they're happy. They're glad that they are being involved in this process and they're not left in the dark. And I think that's something that's lost on a lot of attorneys, that realize that at the end of the day, how you treat people and keeping them informed of their legal case, because it's the most important thing to them. I think sometimes that gets lost on lawyers, that this legal issue for that person, for most people that come to a lawyer, it's the most important thing they have going on in their life at that time, and it's something that the attorney needs to recognize. And through communications, the one way the attorney can make sure that the client knows that the attorney cares.
Well, I get a lot of folks for some reason or other that call me about legal cases. And I get the young kid that's just turned 17 that's made a mistake, but it's a serious mistake and it can hurt them the rest of their life. And then I have folks had folks that call me that are really just not real good folks. They're just but they both deserve a defense. And why is it important that they get a fair and impartial defense?
So that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. The question that I get, how do you sleep at night defending criminals? How do you do that? How do you defend those people? And I sleep like a baby. Okay, I love my job. It's a lot of times the people that will ask me that will also say that they're big proponents. They love the Constitution. Well, if you love the Constitution, you need to love your local criminal defense lawyer, because day in and day out, all I do is argue the Constitution. The presumption of innocence, the burden of proof on the state, that the government has to prove certain things, that they can't just take advantage of people's liberties and their freedom. And the reason why we have these rules is because it's not, it's a slippery slope. If we allow the worst case, so if you say, if we can't, one thing I think I've heard Jack Swerling say one time was, if we can't ensure that the worst SOB gets a fair trial, then how can we ultimately ensure that everybody's going to get a fair trial? If we allow our courts to be tainted to such that where, injustice happens, you have innocent people going to prison. And the sad part is the Innocence Project has through their, through all the exonerations that they've done, they've exonerated many people from death row. These are people that were scheduled to die, convicted, and were on a path to be put to death, and they were exonerated, found innocent, okay, through DNA. And many other people, hundreds of people have been found innocent through DNA from the Innocence Project. The Innocence Project believes possibly up to 3-4%, it might be higher, of people in prison are innocent. And people say, well, 3 or 4%, that's not like a lot. The problem is that's an innocent person spending time in prison. That's someone's father, someone's brother. And when you have, we're an incarceration nation. When you have hundreds of thousands of people who are in prison, when you start looking at 3-4%, that's a lot of people. That's thousands of innocent people in prison languishing. And if anybody who's never been to a prison, because I've visited most of South Carolina's prisons, it's not a place you want to be. Okay, it's horrible. It's dangerous. It's isolating. It's a lot of people there go crazy. And the sad part is a lot of people that are in there, because we don't have proper mental health care. The prisons house a lot of mentally ill people simply because we don't have those institutions in place. I mean, that's the sad fact about it.
And the truth of the matter is that it could happen to you, no matter how upstanding you are. I likened it to Friday night. I went to cover an event at a sponsor of ours that was an adult-themed Halloween party. And they closed off the street. They had band. They had alcohol flowing. I was there working. I took a lot of photographs. I shot a lot of video. I did not have one. In fact, I don't even think I had a bottle of water while I was there because I was so busy. But because of my leg, in the midst of this whole thing, it was dark. I stepped off of a little step, fell out there, skint my knee. I've still got a knot on my elbow that you can see through my shirt. And so then I get up and I teeter-totter because of the problems that I have with my legs and my brace. And I very easily could have been accused of being drunk. And then this lady wraps this bag of ice to my leg because I skipped my knee up. So I'm driving home with this bag of ice, and so stopping and starting, I was being a little herky-jerky.
Right.
I wasn't dangerous, but
erratic.
So easily could have been pulled over. Police officer got out. Obviously, I was weaving because I was standing with a bag of ice saran wrapped to my knee. But it could have happened to me Friday night. And all I was doing was working and trying to make a living.
And the sad fact is, if somebody's willing to lie and accuse you of something, you can get arrested. The credibility of he said, she said cases, that's probably the most troubling to me. If somebody's really out to get you and they've put some time and thought into it and they're willing to lie, there's a good chance they'll get you arrested. And it'll take a good attorney to try to fight the case, maybe even to trial, because a lot of times through investigation, if the police don't do a proper investigation, you're going to get arrested, and it's he said, she said, and they'll just say, let the court system sort it out. And that is one of the things that I see on a daily basis that's scary. And people get arrested every day just simply off someone's word. There's no other follow-up investigation. There's no other evidence that somebody did it, just somebody's word.
And it's not necessarily too that a police officer is intentionally lying, but if you have diabetes and you're having a diabetic episode, your breath smells like alcohol. You wobble, because of your diabetes. There are lots of other reasons to look as if you've been drinking or doing something else. You can always be at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Exactly, and even with diabetes, if the Data Master, the breathalyzer machine, it doesn't actually read alcohol. So if you have diabetes and it's reading those particles in the air, the sugar, the blood sugars that's coming out, it will trigger a blood alcohol result. So the machine will say that you're drunk and you're actually just a diabetic.
Yeah, you're in serious medical condition.
Right. Or if you worked in a chemical plant, so you've inhaled chemicals all day, it'll do the same thing. It'll read a false positive.
So those things are so important. Consultations. When you're talking about consulting with a defense attorney, does it cost money to first go and explain to that attorney what happens in most cases?
It depends. So generally for criminal defense, personal injury matters, virtually all lawyers who do those areas will meet with you for free consultation, sit down, talk about the case. Now, family court's a little bit different. A lot of domestic cases, divorce, adoption, a lot of those lawyers do charge for consultations, and they charge by the hour, and they early and often, kind of thing with the billing. But generally for criminal defense and personal injury matters, there's no fee to meet with the lawyer just to see if they can help you.
Yeah, and in most cases, they can tell you in just a few moments, you need a lawyer. Do you need a lawyer for every court? I mean, we were talking the other day about a case that part of it would be in magistrate's courts and part of it in general sessions. Do you need a lawyer for every case? So,
unless it's a speeding case, and I mean, depending on the type of speeding case, because there's radar issues, or lack of radar, they say a lot of times they can visually estimate the speed. I've seen a couple of those. But anyway, so beyond a speeding case, if you have a criminal offense, if you get arrested or you get a serious ticket, I mean, even simple possession of marijuana, a drug offense, you have a drug conviction on your record, I'd say you absolutely want a lawyer. I mean, the case in point, the trial I had on Monday, person was accused of failure to stop, general sessions, charge, and then reckless driving in magistrate court. Well, they offered to drop the failure to stop if he just pled to the reckless driving. That's pretty minor offense that people plead guilty to. Traffic offense they plead guilty to all the time. You get a fine basically, and you go about your day. He was adamant he was not guilty, that it was not him. We took it to trial, and he was found not guilty of the reckless driving. Now we still have to deal with the general sessions failure to stop. But at the end of the day, although reckless driving was, to most people, a very minor traffic offense, for his job, he's on the road all the time.
It would change his life.
Part of the contract that he has with his employers that he's able to drive. If he got a reckless driving, insurance drops him, he loses his job. It would be life-changing. It would ruin his life because he would lose his job, and he had a very good job, and it was that important to him. So it's all case-by-case basis. But, I mean, to me, there's very few trivial matters that you don't need an attorney for to make sure your rights are protected.
Well, a lot of cases nowadays that involve different things can put you in a position that has very little to do with the original case. There are a lot of cases now that can harm your chance of ever owning a firearm again. So maybe you're a deer hunter and you want to go deer hunting and you've been accused of hitting a live-in lover, spouse, whatever, significant partner. That can change that. Driving cases can change the ability to have a job. Drug charges can change the ability to have a job. And even things that we used to take for granted, like walking outside in the yard and peeing behind a tree. I mean, can end you up on the sex offenders list. It can change your whole life. So those are good reasons, too, to have an attorney.
The one thing I always tell people is that the legal field is not a do-it-yourself project. It's not DIY. If you have a serious medical issue, really, even if you have a small medical issue, you still go to a doctor. You get a flu, you're going to go to the doctor. And so if you have a legal issue, you're going to go to a lawyer. And you shouldn't think that you can do it yourself. And there's this big misconception. A lot of people say, well, I can just handle it myself. It's just not one of those things. It's a very specific profession with a bunch of laws. If you haven't gone to law school and you haven't trained in that area, again, if you grabbed just your local real estate lawyer who doesn't do criminal defense and said, here, try this murder case, they would be lost. Really, beyond that, they'd be lost to try a DUI case. It's that important about knowing how much of the law. Of course, they could try to do the research, but why wouldn't you want somebody who does it day in and day out, who knows all the players, the officers, the prosecutors, the judges, who knows the law, not just basics that they can look up real quick, but actually knows the law and knows how to argue it. You want somebody with that type of experience, and you don't want to do it yourself. I can certainly tell you. I mean, the long-standing kind of quote was the person who represents himself has a fool for a lawyer or a fool for a client. So so at the end of the day, you don't represent yourself. I couldn't encourage somebody more to immediately seek legal representation if they've been arrested. Or injured, for that matter.
How important is it to have those relationships at the solicitor's office, at the police departments, at the magistrate's office, at the general sessions docket court, and in the general sessions court? How important is it to know those people and to be respected by those people?
Very important. It's like anything in life. If someone knows and trusts you, you certainly are easier to have a conversation about, and they can, if you say X, Y, and Z happened, or that you want this result, they're more likely to believe you. You have a credibility with them. You have a working relationship with them. It's only helpful. And if you don't have those relationships, it could potentially not get you the best result possible. I mean, again, so it's one of those where if you have a case in Spartanburg, I don't primarily practice in Spartanburg. I'll be happy to take your case, but I'll tell you, as a general rule, you'd want to find the best lawyer in Spartanburg. I mean, and that's me telling you. That's probably not the best money advice for myself, financial advice, but what I'm telling you is that's what I would do. And then, even if you had to associate another lawyer on the case that you felt was the one you really wanted, but you want local counsel. And, I mean, the best way to look at it is exactly the way big corporations do it when they have money. They have local counsel, and then they have their, lawyer that they know is their guy. The lawyer that they know will do everything they can and that they trust is the best lawyer for them, but they always get local counsel for that exact reason.
Well, it's interesting because now here you are. This is your first day. You've got to head to an office somewhere. I guess it's downtown. You've got to find clients. Are there other things that you have to do in order to open your own practice? Do you have to buy insurance, get bonded, any of those kind of things?
Everything. It's a small business. At the end of the day, a law firm's a small business, and you have to do all those things: malpractice insurance. You have to get business licenses. It's from top to bottom, it's everything.
And people don't realize this, but if you're going to practice in the city of Columbia, but you're also going to work in the town of Lexington, you got to have more than one business license.
That's right.
Just like Paul Kirby's got to, because he's got a Chapin satellite office. He's got to have one there, and he's got to have one here.
Uncle Sam's going to always get his. That's the one thing you know when you're a small business.
That's exactly right. But now, how do people get in touch with you now that you're moved to know exactly whether they need to come sit down with Dayne, and how quickly could they get an appointment with you if they needed you?
Fairly quick. I have an appointment later today with someone, and then, of course, scheduled for court tomorrow, and then supposed to be in Greenwood for court on Friday morning as well, but trying to see whether that one's going to go forward or whether it's going to get continued. The best way to reach me is at 803-272-4503. You can also get a hold of me at 803-999-2030, 2030. And the website that we've just launched is sccriminallaws.com. So that's SC as in South Carolina, criminal laws with an S, LAWS.com. Certainly go there, and you'll have all the contact information and a form to fill out if you want to send me a direct message. But be happy to meet with anybody. As we've said many times on this show, this is not a 9-to-5 job. Most people don't need a criminal defense attorney between the hours of 9 to 5 because they're working. And at the end of the day, people, for the most part, somehow end up getting wrapped up into situations after 5 o'clock, in the afternoon. So be happy to talk to you 24/7. We'll get back in touch with you as soon as possible, as soon as I get the message. And certainly, the best advice I can always give somebody is don't answer any investigative questions from police without having a lawyer present. Don't consent to any searches without first consulting a lawyer. So, the only words that really need to come out of somebody's mouth when they're having any type of interaction with law enforcement is this: I want a lawyer, and I'm not answering any questions.
And is it just Dayne right now? And what are we calling this venture?
So it is a solo practice. It is, essentially Dayne Phillips. If you were saying doing business as, it would be Dayne Phillips, attorney at law. But yes, there's no other, lawyer that I'm working with here in South Carolina. I'm the only licensed South Carolina attorney that I'm working with. So at the end of the day, it's all on my shoulders, and I'm here to serve the public. Like I said, I grew up in this area, so I'm certainly primarily trying to focus on serving Lexington and Richland counties.
But any attorney should be willing to come see you at whatever facility you are arrested in. If I need Dayne and I'm arrested in Lexington County, you're going to come to the Lexington County Jail and meet me if I'm still over there.
I'm going to go to the Lexington County Jail this afternoon. I have a client to see. Yeah. So again, I have an office that I can meet with you by appointment only in Lexington, but my primary office is in Columbia. Certainly be happy to meet with you anywhere you would like, but obviously the office is the most confidential. But yes, if you're arrested in Lexington County, again, anywhere in Lexington County, anywhere in Richland County, anywhere statewide, but primarily focused on Lexington and Richland counties. But if somehow you end up in Greenville and get in trouble, I represent people in Greenville. I have a case in Greenville right now.
And what happens if you get in trouble out of state? You find somebody out of state that
I can help refer you. So I'm only licensed to practice law in South Carolina. South Carolina doesn't share their law license with anyone at what they call reciprocity. So I'd have to find someone to help refer you. And certainly that's what you'd want to do, is to have an attorney that you know and trust in South Carolina. Find an attorney that's reputable in another state. So I can't represent you in Georgia or North Carolina, but I can find you the right lawyer who can help you.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful thing. I'm glad to see that you've taken this step. I know it's tough. I'm a small businessman. You've got a family to support. You've got a new baby that's just about a year old.
Having a 1-year-old and a new business is a lot of pressure, but I'm beyond excited and just glad to take this leap of faith and start this journey.
Yeah.
And glad to have the support of the Ledger.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we're certainly, and again, people call us all the time. And we make referrals all the time for everything from roofers to attorneys. So give us a call if you need help in a professional manner. Say the phone number one more time, and we'll go out with that.
803-272-4503.
Dayne, congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you were here the first day of the new Dayne Phillips Attorney at Law. As we say every day, we love you, and we love Lexington County. Good day and God bless from Good Morning Lexington County.
Thank you.